Morning. Good morning to all participants, and my name is Jolanta Silka, and on behalf of the ENQA and ENQA board, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you in this webinar, which underlines the main findings and lessons learned during the first SEQA-ESG project. And let me start with a high appreciation to all project partners for your active contribution to the project activities in the last 2.5 years. And actually your dedicated engagement and your willingness to change existing quality assurance systems make this project happen. Thank you very much. And as you know, the main objective of the project was to support quality assurance agencies and national authorities in 6 countries: Albania, Czech Republic, Malta, Moldova, Montenegro, and Slovakia, in order to create an ESG compliant quality assurance system, and which is one of the Bologna process key commitments. And ENQA, as a stakeholder organization of quality assurance agencies in the European higher education area, has initiated this project in order to support and to facilitate the development of quality assurance systems in compliance with ESG. And why it is so important for all of us? And the actual answer is quite simple. It's a key element for enhancement, mutual trust, mobility, and recognition between higher education system. And today, as already was mentioned, is our closing event, which is aiming to share experience and good practices, to demonstrate developments from project partners, both from quality assurance agency and national authorities. And this webinar specifically reflects on the key obstacles that were addressed during the project. How the agency independence can be further supported by national legislation on external quality assurance. How agencies manage expectations posed by higher education institutions or other stakeholders on their work. How agencies engage external experts in their quality assurance activities. And also colleagues from ECHA and ENQA will highlight the commitments and lessons learned on how to build an ESG compliant quality assurance agency and how to overcome possible challenges in complying with ESG in the European higher education area. Well, I believe that this project and this participation in this project was an unforgettable journey for all partners, for all participants, and involving also stakeholders and external experts. And the outcomes of this project is a good example, which would definitely encourage also other quality assurance systems to take over the opportunity and to improve their own quality assurance system. So let's start today's seminar, and let's start our discussions and share good practices. Thank you very much and I share the floor to Goran. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jolanta. I would just like to really re-emphasize what you said when you actually started your introduction in thanking all of the project members and the work you have invested in this throughout this journey. Actually, today we hope to showcase some of the things we have discussed and learned throughout the project, but not only that, we wish to have an open discussion on the remaining challenges, on what you see as being the obstacles in reaching ESG compliance, and then perhaps we can learn something new by sharing experience from different contexts. To start with the webinar as such, I would like to now invite Colin Took, Director of ECHA, to elaborate on the state of implementation of the key commitment on external quality assurance across the European higher education area. So what are the key obstacles in reaching ESG compliance? Let's hear from you, Colin. The floor is yours.
Yes, thanks a lot, Goran, Jolanta, and colleagues from ENQA for the invitation to join this the webinar. I had the pleasure, of course, not only to be part in this webinar, but also to have contributed to the SEQA-ESG project in during the last years, especially to the policy dialogues in the beginning, and then to some follow-up visits recently. So it was also a pleasure to meet most of you there, and of course. But I will start with giving a bit an overview of the stage of implementation of the key commitment on the European higher education area overall. And Jolanta has highlighted why the importance of the key commitment, the importance of the quality framework of the European higher education area. I think most of you know that we have a very sophisticated quality framework that was developed over the years, which is not only, I would say, not only the ESG in isolation, but of course, ESG together with the qualifications framework for the European higher education area, the credit system, and of course, complemented by the European approach specifically for joint programs, and the implementation monitored by ECHA as the official register. If we look at the we'll look at the key commitments, just to remind ourselves that there are three of them. Three key commitments for the European higher education area that were identified by ministers a few years ago. One is to implement a 3-cycle system in line with the qualifications framework and using the ECTS credit system. The second key commitment is on recognition and complying with the Lisbon Recognition Convention. And then the third one is about quality assurance, which says that basically both institutions should have an internal quality assurance arrangements that are aligned with the ESG, and that this should be mirrored by external quality assurance being carried out by agencies that are fully aligned with the ESG, and that shown through their registration on ECHA. So how does it look in the EHEA for now? If we go one slide further, so we if we look at the map of the European higher education area, we see that there are 29 countries in the EHEA that fully realize the key commitment and quality assurance already. So that leaves 47 or 14. Sorry, that leaves 18 or rather 16 countries left from the EHEA if you don't count the 2 that are currently suspended. Of course, as you all know, 6 countries were covered in the SEQA-ESG project. I know that some more countries will be part of the SEQA-ESG second project, and then there's still a few more countries in the EHEA to go, where there's still some work to be done to fully align the system with the key commitment. So I think the map shows that in general the picture is quite positive, but that there's still quite some work to be done as well that we shouldn't underestimate. And I think this is also a good moment to also from my side say thanks for your commitment to work together and with your colleagues from your ministries of education, with your stakeholders in the SEQA-ESG project to make the map of Europe even greener in the near future, hopefully. Just a quick word on the DECA database of external quality assurance results, which is the database we have managed since 2018 to show in one European one-stop shop all the quality assurance and accreditation evaluation reports produced by ECHA registered agencies, where you can find nearly 80,000 reports on 3,500 higher education institutions in Europe by now. So most of the systems that have their quality assurance system fully aligned with the key commitment can also be fully represented in DECA by now. But there's a small discrepancy, so there are a few systems sadly that have their quality assurance framework completely aligned with the ESG, but do not have all their evaluation and accreditation results presented on DECA yet. But luckily, that's only 5 countries, and we are working together with agencies and governments from those countries to fill that gap as well. So now we can move on. So a quick look at 2 further commitments in the that were made for the European higher education area in relation to quality assurance. One is well, 2 related commitments, I would say, because they're both about recognition of external quality assurance results across borders. One is the more generic commitment that ministers have made to allow their higher education institutions to work with a suitable ECHA registered agency also from another country for their official accreditation or evaluation, and to have that result recognized in the national system. And if we look at the stage of implementation here, we see that it looks numerically for sure less positive than the overall key commitment. We see that there are a good number of countries where there is a possibility to recognize results from a foreign agency's accreditation or audit based on the ESG framework and ECHA registration, but it's less countries than those that do comply with the key commitment in general. So there's still a number of countries that either have specific national systems or requirements for recognizing cross-border quality assurance results, or that do not have a possibility at all to recognize them within the official external QA framework, so where institutions can only have an additional evaluation or additional audit done by a foreign agency, but the formal and obligatory audit which has to be carried out by the national quality assurance body. Now, if we move on to the European approach for quality assurance of joint programs, which is a special, let's say, a specific commitment in the field of cross-border recognition of quality assurance results, because we have that European approach that was adopted by ministers in 2015 to create a single, really harmonized European framework for evaluating joint programs in line with really one agreed set of standards that can be directly used by all ECHA registered agencies. And here we see that only a small number of countries still are fully allowing their higher education institutions to use the European approach for their joint program accreditations, and instead of having to use the national accreditation standards and criteria. So that a small number of countries allows that fully, and to all higher education institutions. There's a large number of countries that only partially allows the European approach, and that it's only available to some types of higher education institutions, or that it's subject to some additional conditions that go beyond the European approach itself. Nevertheless, we see that it's well, it's picking up speed, and there are more and more institutions that have opted for the European approach, and we see that it's becoming increasingly popular through the European Universities Initiative and the huge number of joint programs that are being rolled out in the context of that. So now, after this overview of how it looks with the key commitment and the 2 further commitments, I would like to go a bit more in detail about the challenges we can see from in terms of agencies achieving ESG compliance. So this is, of course, based on an overall analysis from quality assurance agencies that have applied for registration on ECHA, or that have applied for renewal of registration in the years, well, let's say more or less in the last 6-7 years, based on the ESG 2015. Of course, this is not actually influenced by the SEQA-ESG participants, because none of the SEQA-ESG participants have already gone through a review that was discussed and decided upon by the ECHA Register Committee. So this is rather on other cases, but I think it gives a good overview, and will be interesting to hear from your comments if, seeing from your own context, this is surprising to see, or this is somehow what you would have expected as well, in terms of what standards are the most challenging. And so if we look at the statistics how sorry, let me go. We look at the statistics in which standards we see a partial compliance rather than a compliance more often. One of the most challenging issues are appeals and complaints procedures. We see that the publication of reports is still a challenge in many systems, and so thematic analysis produced by the agency. Also, the involvement of stakeholders is an issue that leads to partial compliance quite frequently, and still also the involvement of students on the review panels. Independence is not interestingly not really at the top, or let's say at the top or the bottom of the list, however you want to put it, but it's somewhere more towards the middle, which might be surprising because it is an important point of discussion in many cases. So we see it's not. It is still a challenge for a substantial number of agencies and systems, but it is interestingly not, at least across Europe, not the most challenging standards of the ones we have. So now we can move on to the next slide. So I want to look a bit at the importance of the legal framework here, because if you look at those standards where we see partial compliance most frequently, there are quite a lot of elements where problems are rooted in the legal framework in one way or the other. I think for independence, it's something that might be obvious to many, that the legal framework plays quite an important role. And it's similar sometimes when it comes to publication of reports, when it comes to appeals regulations, and even when it comes to the involvement of stakeholders. So a few words based on an analysis and peer learning activity as part of the ENQA project, which my colleague Melinda has been primarily working on in the context of the Bologna thematic peer group in quality assurance. And we had a good discussion there on the importance of the legal framework and what legal provisions are most needed or most essential for. And there is a general agreement that, of course, the basic design of a quality assurance system, like the types of accreditations that exist and what are their consequences, that's something that needs to be regulated in the law. Clearly, the same goes for the agency status and the very basic features of an agency's organizational structure, and in that relation is specifically, of course, a strong safeguard for independence. So clear regulations that about the nomination of agencies, governing bodies, regulations preventing like an arbitrary dismissal or dismissal except for very exceptional reasons of an agency's leadership or board members, and then of course some other key issues where a legal basis is very important for the agency to be able to work in line with the ESG. For example, publication of reports. We see that sometimes if that's not clearly regulated in the law, it can be challenging for an agency to realize that because it might not have the legal basis or the legal authority to do so. And of course, cross-border recognition of external quality assurance results is another topic that is important to have clearly set out in the law. On the flip side, so to say, there are also some areas that came out from these discussions that they clearly agreed to better avoid in the let's say in the law on the top level legal instruments, which would be very detailed procedural and methodological rules, or any other provisions that would make the system too inflexible. So I think it is important that the main elements are regulated in the law, but at the same time the law leaves enough flexibility to further to the agency or even to secondary legislation to realize it in practice, and also to make sure that those things that might require adaptation more frequently, that they don't that they are not in a situation that they can't be adapted anytime fast, because it would require a change of law, which of course is a complex and lengthy procedure in many cases. So if I can move to the final slide with some concluding observations, also inspired, of course, by the SEQA-ESG results that also our president, Carl, my colleague Melinda, and I were all involved in some extent. Is that, but also based, of course, from our general experience and overview of reviewing agency's application for registration, is that, of course, as I already said, the legal framework is really an important element to set because it sets the groundwork for ESG compliance in many areas. I mean, it's really like the sort of the fundament that especially you as colleagues from agencies need to be able to do your job in line with the ESG. And if the legal framework prevents you from doing that, then of course that's a very fundamental problem. And yeah, there needs to be this healthy balance between what is regulated in the law, what's in secondary legislation, and what is left up to an agency's decision that can be adapted more flexibly. I think it's important to bear in mind also that all the time when discussing about the ESG and implementing them at the level of the legal framework or your agency, that they have, of course, that twin purpose of accountability and enhancement that we should all strive for and all aim to enshrine in our quality assurance processes. Even, of course, I mean, I do know that in practice, then let's say the normative role is quite strong, and there is always a bit of risk that the enhancement component might get lost in the discussion and in the focus on ensuring compliance. But I think we should remind it from time to time that also the enhancement focus needs to be in mind. I think we also know by now that the current ESG are they do allow for really a good diversity of approaches. They allow different approaches to quality assurance, more institutional focused, more program focused, depending on the country's context and depending on what is needed in a specific system. I think it's also very clear that the ESG have a common denominator of standards in ESG Part 1 that we expect also all agencies in all kind of systems and all kind of quality assurance approaches to look at. But at the same time, they also allow agencies to focus on specific dimensions and to add elements that are particularly important for specific countries and specific contexts, and to add these to their own criteria. And I think that shows the flexibility of those standards, which are, I think, clearly widely and fully supported. There are still some exceptions that you come along in practical discussions where maybe certain parts of the standard are their importance is shared more by some more than others. But in general, I think we don't see any serious lack of support for what is in the standards. Everyone agrees that what is there, I think, is the important common denominator we should use and we should agree on in Europe. And so it is primarily a matter of implementation and not a matter of agreeing whether the standards are really the ones we need or not. And I think to wrap this up, I think we do see that the ESG are clearly serving as an important common denominator. That of course they always do limit or constrain someone in doing something. I mean, I think no set of standards would ever be there without limiting anyone anywhere. But I think we can see that the ESG definitely do not limit or constrain any system or any agency more than necessary, as we needed to actually ensure the cross-border transparency and trust that the ESG set out to achieve. So conclude with that. Thanks for your attention and look forward to some questions and reflections from you.
Thank you very much, Colin, for this presentation. I know it's not easy to provide such a nice overview of the implementation of external quality assurance across the European higher education area in such a short amount of time, but still many thanks for doing that. Questions to Colin or reflections, comments? We still have a couple of minutes left before we move on. So I would really like to invite you to use your hand raise function in Zoom, and if you have any question or comment to Colin. No?
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy, indeed. Eva, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Just a comment regarding the implementation of the European approach in Spain, because I know that it's kind of difficult sometimes when there are new regulations to know if there is really the option for all the institutions to apply it. But from my interpretation of the new regulations, I think that all the institutions will be able to apply it, even if there are specific considerations for the European universities, new programs that might arise regarding if the country in which the coordinating institutions allows for the use of the European approach. But I think that hopefully in the next few years, it will be easier for all of us, and that we will have the option of having some new institutions in the map that Colin presented. So I think that most probably, I mean, I have a couple of procedures in the next month, so we will start filling up the map. So thank you.
That's great to know. Thanks. So if I understand correctly, it is really open to all institutions in Spain now, not only to those in the European Universities Initiative, but also it would be open to an institution that decides to do, let's say, a joint program completely of their own initiative and self-funded with some partners.
Yeah. I mean, most of them, the ones that are applying now are the Erasmus Mundus master programs, because I mean it's easier for them. But yeah, it's open for all joint programs, and then there is a specific clause for the programs from the European universities. Okay. But I can send you the link with a translation, so we can update you.
Oh, that's great. I mean, of course, we are always happy to know if there's a reason to update some information on a specific country and the implementation of the European approach to the better. That's
yeah, and Melinda was asking if it's possible for bachelor degrees. Theoretically, it's possible, so there is no restriction. But it is true that it's difficult to have a joint bachelor degree, because I think that you know that in Spain bachelor degrees are from 4 years or longer, because there was an option for 3 years bachelor degrees with the previous legislation, but nowadays it's only 4 years bachelor degrees or longer in the case of medicine, architecture, and some of the engineers.
Thank you very much, Eva, for this update. And indeed, it is important to see that there is progress in countries, and that we are having ECAR in place precisely to showcase what external quality assurance, what's the status of external quality assurance in different countries to provide trust throughout the European higher education area. Now, Colin, you very nicely listed key challenges when it comes to ESG compliance, still at some of the systems or agencies, among them independence, involvement of students in panels, involvement of stakeholders in the agency's external quality assurance activities. And we will now dig into some of these key challenges in the next 3 sessions. We will start with the importance of legal frameworks for quality assurance. Colin, you named it on your slide as groundwork needed for ESG compliance. So I would like to invite our next 2 speakers, Robert and Martina, to join me on the floor in elaborating on the role of legislative support in reinforcing the agency's independence when providing in external quality assurance. We will start with the Slovak example on how the agency's independence is and was supported with the changes in their national legal framework. More specifically, I'm referring to their recently adopted Act on Quality Assurance in Higher Education, but I will leave you, Robert, to elaborate on this further. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Goran. First of all, I would like to thank for the possibility to be a part of the SEQA project. It gives us quite a lot of practical views on the ESG and on the implementation of these things. And the second thank is to those who help Slovakia to brought new legislation, because we have quite strong issues with the Independency 8 years ago, and the Accreditation Commission lost the membership in ENQA due to a couple of things, and the key was the Independency. The main decision, the formal decision, was done by minister, and that was not very in line with the principles that the independent institutions should be assessed by independent agencies. So the new legislation was adopted in 2018, and it was brought a completely new law. So it's not a part of the higher education law, but it's a separate law. And it introduced the concept of quality assurance that was not very much before. It created the agency as a public authority, the legal entity, as an independent body, and define a relation between the agency and higher education institutions that gave us a bit more faster procedures as we would go according to the general civil law. And of course, there are some framework for processes, including appeals and some mandatory or duties for institutions, mainly the 6-year periodicity for the reaccreditation of the internal quality assurance systems at the higher education institutions. I would like to return a little bit on the ESG. The independence is requiring, in fact, three areas of independency. The first one is the autonomy of the organizational or of the agency as it is, as a body. The second one is the operational one, and the last is focused on the outcomes. So the organizational independence, we had now very strong legal framework respecting the ESG, that is helping agency to be self-governing and independent from others. The self-governing organs are mainly the executive board, which is also the decision-making organ, and the other and all of them are creating in a specific way that is fixed in the law. The executive board is creating by nomination from main official stakeholders. So it's higher education institutions council. They are usually academics elected by academic senates from the faculties and from the universities. Then the students higher education council, institution council, which is student union, Slovak Rectors Conference. All of these three representations of higher education institutions nominates a 2-person, and employment association or any other public or private groups can nominate, and minister is choosing 2 of them. So this is 8 people in the body, and the chair of the executive board is selected by the public call for competition, where is part of this is a public hearing, and is appointing for 6 years. And even in the law is written that the commission for selection must have 5 people nominated, but all the stakeholders I talk about. So this is some kind of assurance that the organization's independence is fixed in the law. And the other things, the operational stands in the defining of standards, procedures, and methodologies, which are according to law the right and the responsibility of the agency. There are some additive duties, that all these strong procedures or the rules must be on at least for 1 month for public discussion. So always when there are some changes, there must be a public discussion, but the key decision or the responsibility is on the agency. This also is valid for the recruitment and nomination and appointment of the reviewers and the composition of review panels. Each review panel must be agreed in the executive board according to the concrete procedure or the request of the school and that is on the desk. Decisions are taken by the executive board, so the formal outcomes are also depending on the decisions on executive board. No one stakeholder has a domination position in the board, neither the state or the politicians. So this is some kind of guarantee that the influence will be independent. The decisions of the board will be independent and the decision of the agency as well. The members should act on their individual capacity. So we have directly in the law written that not those who nominate them can drive them. They must act on the individual capacity, and this is also true on the Board of Appeal. Those people are chosen for these positions for 5 years. Also, the procedure is written very in details in the law, and the final instance is on the the decision is done by agency, and if institution is not satisfied, so they can go to the court if they like. We didn't have such a case yet, but that's the very brief. I think it would be better to have some questions because the topic is really quite broad. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Indeed, let's see if there are any questions for Robert in how they have actually managed to provide for agencies' dependence and for the independence of their activities through the legislative support. Any question, any remark to Robert? I'm checking my second screen as well. Alexis, please.
Yeah. Hi, Robert. Thanks for this very interesting presentation. I have a question, but also not for me, but also maybe for the audience. You've mentioned, and we've also seen it in the presentation of Colin, about the importance of the legal framework as a groundwork for ensuring or reinforcing the independence of the agency. My question is, what will be your advice for those agencies that might need still to advocate for a stronger or improved framework that will ensure this independence? What will be your experience? You've talked that there was a new legal framework. So what will be your advice for those agencies that are still in 2018 for you? So what they could use to advocate for such legal framework?
Well, the main battle, I would say, was before 2019. The process of the adaptation of the new legislation, that was really tough. And I was on the other side at that time. I was a rector, and we fight against the law because there was not clear who will be who is doing the decisions. That was not very clear, and there was a lot of fears on that. And I remember that was one meeting directly in the parliament, in the Commission of Education, and there was a chair of the commission and the ministry at that time, Mrs. Lubiova. It was roughly 10 people from the universities and students and other stakeholders, and we discussed very deeply and very that was the critical point, and the result was what we can see now in the law. Of course, the law is not ideal. There is a lot of things that might be improved, but the basic framework is very strong for the agency. The one point what I would like to say, it's always a question where in the society you will stand the agency. Once it should be independent. So always they must be some stakeholders. So if it is parliament or minister or state and this should be divided, make some distribution of the influence to have some kind of diversity of views, and this is probably the key issue on the independency, because there are always some dependence, but it must be distributed not to prevail in one way. But always it's a dynamic situation. So I think the legislation is critical, and something like who is the owner, so who are the stakeholders. If there are some representation of higher education institutions, so this is very good to use it, but it must not be only one. That's the critical point. In some countries, there are association of experts for quality assurance, for example. So that might be one of the way and one of the part of the stakeholders, but this is not situation in Slovakia. In Britain, there are associations or institutions that are feeling in certain field, in engineering, for example, and they are doing accreditation, they are doing quality assurances for the higher education institutions they ask for. So this might be also some way.
Thank you very much, Robert, for this. I think that you very nicely emphasized what we learned throughout the project is that this communication between the stakeholders in positioning the agency within the higher education system is crucial. What are the roles of such a body? Who actually decides on external quality assurance results within this body, and how this is accepted by the community is vital. Jolanta, you had your hand up.
Yes, I have just a short comment regarding that. I see that you had quite a good discussion and conversation with all stakeholders, so that it allows you to come to a joint agreement how to create the system, and to ensure the independence also of quality assurance agency. And but you mentioned in your presentation, I have also a question. Yes, you mentioned in your presentation that for selection of board members, it will be a public procedure, so public selection procedure. And as your system is probably not very huge, do you see any challenges in selection of independent experts for these decision-making bodies?
Well, there are always some challenges, but I think it's hard to say for me, because I went through this kind of selection, and that was the only one selection yet. But I think the key issue was that the commission, directly in the law is written who is in the commission for selection. And there are only the people from stakeholders, from council, university council, or from rectors conference, from students, employment associations, and from ministry, because this is the only way the minister can say something. All the other things are pushed to only formal position, not the active and not to the decisions. But in the last time, it was also the minister that time chose one of the very well-known academics as a member of the decision-making board, the selection board. So it was always it was somehow in the stakeholders, real higher education institution stakeholders position. So this was some kind secure, but you know, always the laws are adopting by politicians, and always there might be a strong change. Of course, then there are other consequences resulting from that if it is not in line with ESG. In fact, we had the previous system set up differently, but it was set up in early 90s in this way. So it was on that time, it was very good. It was working. In early 90s, that was only 15 to 18% of the population going to the tertiary education. So it was working differently. But now it's because we have quite a lot of, we have over 50% of the population is going for higher education. So there must be, we have maybe twice or even more as many institutions. So the landscape's changed, and quality assurance is the real issue, and we have to go this way.
Thank you. Yes,
thank you
for your answer. And yes, it's true that we as an agency actually should follow all the changes and ensure that the system is still in line with ESG. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. If there's no more question for Robert, I would actually like to, I would like to thank you, Robert, for this presentation.
Thank you.
Invite Martina to reflect on how the project actually helped the agency, your agency, identify gaps in your independent work on external quality assurance. What are your plans in this regard? I invited you as part of this session, not because you're a neighboring country to Slovakia, but simply because I think we had very, very fruitful discussions on how the legislative support can further, how the legislation can further support agency in its work. And I wanted from this angle actually to hear from you and to share this experience we had in the last 2.5 years in Czech Republic. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Goran, for the opportunity to share our journey through this project with you. I don't want to get lost in too much detail, but if any information is missing, feel free to ask at the end. I just wanted to focus more on how the project went for us and how our work on independence developed throughout the project and, well, beyond. So our agency was established in 2016. There used to be another agency prior to that, a similar history to Slovakia, I would say. And the agency is set up in a way that it is independent in making decisions. It makes its own accreditation decisions that are legally binding, but it is not a separate legal entity. It is not a legal subject. Therefore, it does not have its own resources. It uses the finances of the ministry to run its operations. It does not have its own employees. So all the staff members are actually employees of the ministry, and the office of the agency is a department of the ministry. And this, of course, influences the operations of the agency in a number of ways. And we knew from the beginning, or even before the project started, that there were some issues related to this arrangement. This has been a historical arrangement in the Czech Republic, also with the previous agency, just kind of carried over to the current agency. What the project brought for us was an external perspective on this. We and other stakeholders, other national players, we were able to hear from other actors from abroad during the peer counseling visit, but also other events. We were able to hear their view on this and their reflection. And as you can imagine, sometimes it's a bit different when an argument is made by the staff of the agency and when it's made by a president of ENQA or president of EHEA or another highly positioned international expert. So this, I think it gave us quite an impetus to really push forward with some changes and to really start working on these issues. And then this was translated into the National Action Plan and later on into the agency action plan that were developed as a part of the project. And when working on the independence issue, but also, of course, some other topics that were a focus for us during the project, we realized how interconnected all the issues were, and that you cannot really take individual issues out of their context and solve them separately, but you have to think about the agency and the quality assurance system as a whole, and the solutions that can really be effective are the ones that target the system as a whole in its context. And at that stage, we started to think about independence in a broader sense, also not only about how the agency is set up, what the competencies of the bodies are, what the financing is, and so on. But we also realized that some of the other issues are actually also aspects of independence. For example, so far we are not allowed by the law to publish reports from external quality assurance procedures. It's due to the fact that as a public administration agency, our activities are covered by the Administrative Procedures Act, which is a general law that governs all proceedings between public administration and the public persons or institutions in the country. And this law says that the proceedings, which are in our case are accreditation, external quality assurance proceedings, that they are not public, and that the information resulting from them is not public. So this means that we ourselves are not able to choose a way or a procedure to do things in order to comply with the ESG and in order to benefit the institutions and the public in a way that we would like to. We are not independent in making these types of decisions. We are restricted by the legal framework, even in these kinds of issues. So as I said, independence became quite a broader issue for us at that stage. And moving on to the final stages of the project, we had another peer counseling visit, more of a progress visit to see where we have moved from the beginning of the project towards the end. And this was also a crucial meeting for us. It was also due to the fact that we had a transition in leadership of the agency over the summer. We now have a new president and vice president of the agency. And I think it was very valuable for them as the people who will basically set the course for the agency for the next 6 years, to have the opportunity to meet with ENQA and EHEA representatives and to discuss these issues specifically related to independence. And it really helped us to look at things from a more systemic perspective, to get that idea that even if we feel that things are working, in some aspects are working right at the moment, we need to look to the system itself and to ask, does the system ensure that something cannot happen? And the answer is not that it's not happening or it has not happened in the past years, but are there gaps in the system that would allow something potentially negative to happen, like a negative influence or more of a personal interest to be pushed through to the decision making or to the governing of the agency. So this perspective really, I think, pushed our thinking even further to another level in terms of independence. And it was just really helpful to be able to talk to somebody from the outside about these issues, to just get a different angle on those things that we had been discussing internally, but we had perhaps not asked some of the questions ourselves before. So that was quite helpful for us. And we realized that there is always work to do and always more layers to the issues to think about. It can be a discouraging thought in some ways, but at the same time, I think it also just shows how much potential there is for change. And thinking about the more practical issues, we of course realized that we need change of legislation in order to solve a lot of the issues related to independence. And as you probably know, changing the Higher Education Act or any larger law is quite a task, also because of course there's a lot of other topics covered by that act and a lot of other actors might want to dive into other topics than quality assurance when the law is being open for amendments. So it's a whole process. It's very lengthy, very complicated. So we need to be patient. That's quite a lesson. I think we also learned through this that a lot of issues, especially related to independence in the legal framework, are just going to be solved overnight. But looking into our other project countries, but also our neighbors in the region, we also discovered that a lot of the countries have a specific law on quality assurance, which we don't have so far. But it's an interesting approach for us to look more into as a possible way to go forward. Yeah. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Martina, for this honest reflection on the path you have gone through in the last 2.5 years under the SEQA-ESG. I really like the way you have put the positive angle to it. It is important to see it in that way. The project is in the place actually to indeed bring in an external view to your daily activities. Sometimes we just simply don't have time to think why we are doing some things, but rather just trying to survive the day. Questions, reflections? Anyone? No? If not, then just a quick question to both of you, so to Robert and to Martina. If you would need to identify one most important lesson learned, what would you say it was from the SEQA-ESG project? Robert first, perhaps.
This is quite.
You're muted, Robert.
I suggest that this is quite a difficult task to say only one. Well, I have to be open. When we started, we feel that we have a lot of challenges, and practically we have to build everything from the scratch. So we put it somehow our ideas, and we start to do something in organizational issues and procedures and standards and all those things. And when came the SEQA project, and mainly the counseling visit. So I told that we have to put all our hesitations and all our challenges on the desk and try to ask what is the recommendation. And that was probably the most effective way. And we got a lot of responses on a lot of issues. Our main issues was that we are a small country and everybody knows everybody, and the review panel should consist from people that are independent, but not biased and not in conflict of interest. And that might be a difficult task if you have to follow also the field of study and the very particular assessment in a particular field. So that was one of the issues, but there were even more. But I think the discussions were very useful, and we are grateful also the topics for the seminars were chosen according to our most important challenges, and we have been able to learn a lot. So that was our view. That's my personal view.
Thanks so much.
Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Robert. So getting an external perspective to what the agency is doing at the moment is vital from what I hear. Martina, what would you say?
Well, I was actually going to go on quite a similar note, and I think this will be probably a theme that will carry through this seminar about this external perspective, because I think regardless of the level of compliance that you have reached, there's always something else to focus on, something else to work on within that specific area, and sometimes it can be one question or one remark that someone has made that will spark a new idea and a new angle to look at things from, that will make you realize things that you hadn't realized before. I think a lot of times it's quite easy to kind of get caught up in the same, in a group of people that are kind of thinking the same way, and discussing the same issues over and over, and kind of develop this common understanding. But that's where the external feedback or the external reflection is really important, because it will help you move forward with your thinking and develop it further.
Thanks so much, Martina. So indeed, we are kind of building a team already here, I see. I think that indeed bringing in 6 different systems, 6 different agencies and their stakeholders under one project was actually something that was crucial in sharing experience, such experience as you mentioned. If there's no more question for the 2 speakers, let me thank them again for your contribution, and let's move to the next session. Here we will touch upon the standards 3.1 and 2.2 of the ESG. What I mean by that is we would like to now discuss with you a bit further on how agencies manage expectations from their stakeholders when designing their external quality assurance activities, and how do they involve, listen to their stakeholders in this regard. It is one of the standards of the ESG where the requirement is to build a fit-for-purpose quality assurance agency. I'm referring to ESG 2.2, and then how stakeholders are involved in the agency's activities overall. That's ESG 3.1. And for this particular session, I thought of the 2 colleagues, one from Moldova and one from Malta, in elaborating how agencies actually manage these expectations posed by higher education institutions and other stakeholders on the work of external quality assurance. First we will listen to the example from Anates from Moldova. Please, Stella, the floor is yours.
Goran, thank you very much for the introduction, and once again let us express our gratitude for having us in the SEQA-ESG project that we found very beneficial for us as an agency in particular, and for the Moldovan quality assurance system in general, because the topics that were tackled during or within the project were and still are of great importance for us for the further enhancement and improvement when it comes to, of course, our QA system. So let me first start my presentation with a quotation that I took from, and which I agree with, from a guide for effective stakeholder involvement in quality assurance that was produced within another project, effective stakeholder involvement. And namely the fact that a QA system that is shared by all stakeholders is better than one that is developed and run by only one stakeholder, and that stakeholder support is part of a democratic process and builds a better basis of trust, which is crucial for in quality assurance. So stakeholders are actually involved in different ways in external quality assurance, and consequently also in the work of the QA agencies. Their involvement is different, of different categories of stakeholders, of great importance for the agency activities, and so that they become meaningful and lead to the continuous improvement and the enhancement of both internal and external quality assurance, creating the premises for the instillment of a quality culture in education in our country. So the involvement of stakeholders is formalized actually in the Moldovan legal acts, starting from the basic law, the Code of Education of the Republic of Moldova, in our methodologies, in our procedures, and lately in the regulation that we developed on the involvement of stakeholders in quality assurance activity. It's basically a regulation that describes and regulate the basic actions by which we establish and maintain constructive relations with our stakeholders. So these activity or these the actions under the regulation are public. They have to ensure the effectiveness of stakeholder involvement in external QA at education levels, including in the field of research, because we are covering that field as well. So when it comes to what we aim with this legal act right now is having a more structured idea on how we consult the stakeholders, how we select the members for external evaluation panels, expert commissions, profile committees that we have as part of our structure, how we analyze and implement proposals made by the stakeholders or by the beneficiaries, and how we draft and involve them in drafting and implementing regulatory acts in the field of quality assurance. So shall we move to the next slide? Stakeholders actually can be more or less important, and the level of their involvement is different, and agencies actually what we learned from the project should define them depending on their priorities. That's why again, depending on the priority the agency has set forward, we have defined who are our stakeholders in our context, like any natural legal person interested in the processes of external quality assurance of studies at all levels of education. That's why here we have the representatives of the academic environment, the students, the business representatives, most important, the Ministry of our Ministry of Education and Research, graduates, different other organizations, central public, local public authorities, and so on. So the question that is of great importance here is, why do we need to involve the stakeholders? And within the project, during the discussions we had in the fourth workshop, so we came to the general conclusion that we need stakeholders, we need to involve them in order to build trust on the agency's work, to get a perspective from their view, because they actually can create a bridge between the agency's work, between the activities that are run within educational institutions, whether the learning outcomes are fit for the requirements of the labor market, whether the requirements or the expectations of the students and graduates are met or not. And we, the other general conclusion that we got through within the project is also that it is not actually easy to involve all of these stakeholders and convince them to take active part in our procedures. So to the next slide. So there are different levels of involvement of stakeholders, but no matter what that level is, it should create a possibility actually for a cooperation and an opportunity for their consultation and information. The criteria that lead to the involvement of different categories of stakeholders are different in different systems, and the impact can be increased by involving them in different activities, for example, in the trainings that we carry out. Actually, the overall objective of their involvement is to improve the activity of the agency and lead to stakeholders having a common understanding on what quality assurance is and what is the scope of the quality assurance. From our perspective, we involve stakeholders at different levels, starting from developing and updating the regulatory framework that we work under, so especially involving the decision-making bodies in the amendments to the national regulatory framework, the other stakeholders like higher education institutions, students, graduates, business representatives in development and revision of our standards and procedures, on our quality assurance tools that we are applying. Also, another level of involvement might focus on the organizational structure of the agency. In our case, we have representatives of stakeholders in the governing board, in the profile committees and external evaluation panels, which according to our provisions, they have to encompass all, at least the most important stakeholders like higher education institutions, representatives of academia, business representatives and student representatives. Also, another level of involvement focuses on the external quality assurance activities like institutional evaluation, study program evaluations that we carry out, their involvement in the interviews and site visits, in drafting the external evaluation reports, and of course, what is most important, the outcome of their involvement in these kind of procedures is ultimately to formulate recommendations and mandatory areas for improvement of educational institutions and study programs. The other level where we mostly try involving the stakeholders, including the general society, is in the dissemination public discussions of our procedures, of the external evaluation results. So the public discussions take place on different media in different contexts, on the websites, on the social networking sites, during seminars, webinars, roundtables, the legal documents being mostly discussed on a national public consultation website. So we try to tackle the stakeholders in many different ways to get them as much involved in our procedures as possible. So, but we have nevertheless to take into account that different stakeholders can have different visions on quality assurance and also different expectations from us. And thus, we as an agency should, or agencies should be ready to adjust to the needs of our stakeholders, to provide them with an environment of interaction and communication, also to make them understand the quality assurance principles and roles. And therefore, as a general conclusion, the constant cooperation and communication between QA agencies and stakeholders, as you can see, is very much needed. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So when it comes to the challenges, I already discussed, so can we move on? When it comes to the challenges that we discussed also in the project and that we agreed upon, so among all the agencies involved, so the common challenges that quality assurance agencies encounter when it comes to their involvement refer mainly to maintaining and increasing their trust, to the involvement of students in the accreditation process of programs. Another challenge is the increasing the pool of students, peer reviewers, and identification of experts from the teaching staff, students for educational institutions in specific fields. Another challenge is the short lifespan of the student that we talked about, so the lack of professional associations, and in this regard we have noticed the low interest of businesses in quality assurance in education. And also another one might be the involvement of international experts in our case, as the procedures are mostly conducted in our language, in Romanian. So students, I'm coming back to the students because they are the most fragile actually stakeholders, and it is difficult to involve them when we think that they have many other activities. So apart from taking part in some external ones like the ones provided by the agencies. One other challenge encountered is that in many systems, as we found during the project, students are not regarded as members with equal rights. Luckily, in our context, we have said from the very beginning that the students are members with completely equal rights, and they have the rights to vote, the right for their opinion, even the right to be remunerated, for example, when they are members of the external evaluation panels, the same as the other members, regardless of whether they are students or not. So what we actually plan for the future and also set up in our agencies plan for stakeholder involvement. So since the involvement of stakeholders in the quality assurance activities of the agencies is not 1 or 2 times activity, so we have to admit that, but actually represents a continuous process at all levels of activities carried out. The timeline that is specified in our action plan, we have to say that is mostly focused on some permanent involvement with some actions like their involvement in the design or the redesign of our QA system or their recruitment and selection methods to be performed upon necessity. So we as action lines that have set in our action plan, so focus on future activities on organizing open dialogues with the stakeholders to clarify the concepts of quality assurance. This is actually done yearly in 2 or 3 information sessions per year. The systematic involvement of stakeholders in the design and redesign of quality assurance system every time when it is necessary, when a new legal amendments take place. Another future activity or current activities, creating a greater and more explicit level of transparency regarding the different objectives of involving different categories of stakeholders. So because each stakeholder, so we involve them for a specific reason. Applying various methods of recruitment and selection of stakeholders, because now it's an open call. Usually, so they can apply, for example, to become members in the external evaluation panels, and we have some specific criteria set for that. Applying various periodic selection and training of potential experts in order to involve them in external evaluation missions. So these trainings are organized periodically, either we plan them either upon request. Organizing a transfer of knowledge with regard to higher education and internal and external quality assurance, again, during the sessions. Equal treatment of the views of all members of the evaluation panels, both in the external evaluation process and in the decision making. Identification and involvement of relevant stakeholders in the agency's internal and external quality assurance activities. Another activity planned is to ensure that the communication is at a high level of transparency with all categories. That's why we try to reach to them through different possible ways. And last but not least, integrating the effective involvement of stakeholders in the agency's strategic policy and other policies related to internal quality assurance. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Stella, for this oversight of your agency's activities when it comes to stakeholder involvement. I'm very well aware of your very systematic approach to it, and actually thank you for presenting it so clearly today to our listeners. Before I open the floor for questions, I would actually, if you allow me, ask Lawrence to present Maltese case, how the agency identified gaps in the agency's involvement of stakeholders. He will also talk about the strengthening of their quality assurance committee, how they designed the advisory committee, these kind of things, and then we will go into the discussion if you agree. Lawrence, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Goran. Good morning, dear colleagues. As stated by you in the previous presentations, for MFHEA, for the Malta Fair and Higher Education Authority, our involvement in this project was a very positive experience, very beneficial. and it enhanced and will surely contribute to the development of our QA processes, particularly with regards to the involvement of the different stakeholders. So, okay. So basically, I will be discussing the involvement of stakeholders in our system in two different committees that the Malta Fair and Higher Education Authority has, the Advisory Committee and the Quality Assurance Committee. And then I will conclude by mentioning the challenges that we have and the challenges ahead. Okay, so first of all, the involvement of stakeholders is something which is stated in the law that regulates the authority. So it is by law that the authority has to consult to involve the stakeholders. And in fact, in Article 18 of the law that established the Malta Fair and Higher Education Authority refers to this advisory committee. How this is formed, particularly with regards representatives from the further and higher education institutions. There we issue an expression of interests for those who would like to come forward to put their name to represent the further and higher education institutions. And in fact, the first selection was held in January 2021. I would like to say that before the Malta Further and Higher Education Authority was a National and Further and Higher Education Commission. It's not just a change in name, but giving the status of an authority by law gives more independence and autonomy to the authority from the ministry. Also, everything was transparent and the results were published on the website. Now, how is this advisory committee composed? There's a representative of students, very important stakeholders, and representatives of the civil society, representatives from the business community, because at the end of the day, the higher education institutions, the further and higher education institutions, the private ones are a business, form part of the business community. And we also wanted to include the majority, the trade unions, which represent the majority of employees, of the lecturers, of the teaching staff in the further and higher education sector. Now, if we can move on to the next slide. How does this advisory committee meet? It meets regularly. Having the advantage of being a very small country, they come here at our premises. Obviously now post-COVID, we started meeting again face-to-face. And sometimes I'm invited by our CEO to attend these meetings, and I can assure you that there is a very, very interesting discussion going on. We present, here I have put an example of the main documents and the main issues that we were discussing during this year. And we present for discussion the many changes that the authority is doing, not only with regards the QA perspective. As you might know, the authority is also an accrediting agency, and the processes that we adopt. Okay, we are receiving very, very positive feedback about this method, this new method, since the authority has been established legally in 2021. And it is obviously our intention to proceed with this. Everything is minuted, everything is documented, and everything is then referred also to the board of the authority. So next slide, please, Goran. Okay, other stakeholders' involvement. We have been now for quite a long time involving students as peer reviewers in external quality assurance audits. And also, as we've done yesterday, so this is very common that we do, we organize different webinars, seminars, and workshops to discuss the introduction of new guidelines or regulations. So we do not just say, there's the advisory committee, we present our new regulations or guidelines in that committee, and we're sort of happy that we have involved the stakeholders. No, we go beyond that. We invite each and every provider to attend these workshops. Again, it is an advantage for us being a small country. And in fact, yesterday, we really had a good attendance. Particularly, we are in the process now of updating our referencing report. Also, the authority in Malta is responsible for the policy development in further and higher education. And on the 9th of December, we'll launching the strategic vision of the further and higher education 2030. And again, stakeholders were consulted. Just for your information, in Malta, we have a Ministry of Education, but we don't have a specific ministry for higher education. And all that falls within the remit of further and higher education is within the authorities' duties and responsibilities to take care of. For example, the strategic vision, the government has tasked the authority to come out to present a strategic vision for further and higher education. And yes, we have done a lot of work with the stakeholders as well. Next slide, Goran. Okay, so what are the challenges ahead? First of all, I would like to start with the fourth point with regards to the Quality Assurance Committee. Now, the board of the authority is appointed directly by the minister, but the technical expertise, the technical branch then of the board is the Quality Assurance Committee, which is appointed by the board, not by the ministry. However, to increase the autonomy of the Quality Assurance Committee, which has a very, very important role here within MFHEA, we have put forward a number of suggestions to the ministry how the autonomy and more involvement of stakeholders in this important committee is increased, okay? We are in discussions with the ministry because at the end of the day, it's the minister that will legislate this important step in Parliament. Obviously, a very important challenge for us is maintaining and increasing trust of all stakeholders, particularly, I would say, the general public, that the quality of further and higher education in Malta is assured. And another thing that we are working on, and this is proving to be quite challenging, as I said, the MFHEA is also an accrediting agency. We accredit programs. We learned about this lack of involvement of important stakeholders of students during this project, during a peer counseling visit, which was held online. I think it was February 2021, that yes, we need to start involving students in the accreditation process of programs. We currently engage experts in the field, in the area of that particular program, but up till now, we have not started engaging students. This is proving to be quite challenging because we have issued an expression of interest for students to work to be evaluators of programs, what we had a very low response. Now, in the coming weeks, we are meeting also the president of the local student representatives in the self-accrediting institutions, and we are also creating training, which will be online for students who will be working with us in this important process, okay? We are also involving students in the drafting of guidelines and regulations. For example, last year, we have issued regulations about RPL. We are going to issue guidelines about quality assurance of work-based learning components. We have started the process of involving students after having reflected about this during this SEQA-ESG project. And also another issue that we have and we need to work upon is how to increase the pool of local students peer reviewers in external quality assurance audits. Now, this is an issue because Malta being a small country, there's the tendency that people who would be interested or are capable or fit for purpose to do this task might have a possible conflict of interest. So this could be one of the main reasons why our pool of local students peer reviewers is very limited, okay? in general, this is the main issues, the main actions that we are taking to involve all stakeholders. I think the main challenges remain with involving the students in all aspects, in all tasks being taken by the authority.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, for this honest reflection on your challenges at the end of the presentation as well. Now, we've heard from the two agencies how they structure their approaches to engaging stakeholders. I know we are limited with time, but I would still like to take some questions. So, Tiana, please go ahead.
Hello to everyone. I actually worked in a Montenegrin agency as Deputy Director for Quality Assurance and Research, and was fully involved in the SEQA-ESG project. And I can, from the bottom of my heart, say that this was the most important project for quality assurance in Montenegro. And it raised a few very important lessons, not only for quality assurance, but for higher education in general in Montenegro. I will reflect to all three presentations that we have heard until now. Participation in this project was very challenging because during that period, Montenegro went through a change of government, had 3 ministries in charge of quality assurance, had 3 ministers, had 3 ministers' teams, people in charge of higher education in ministries. Why am I mentioning all of this? We have learned the most important lesson that government is very, very important stakeholder in the whole process. Without consensus and full participation of government, actually, namely ministry, the reform cannot be achieved. I call ESG compliance the reform. It is actually a reform. For example, Kosovo's case showed that they put compliance with ESG as the key priority national reform that they presented to European Commission in the process of EU accession. So they had a very strong political support for compliance to ESG. From that point, we come to raising awareness of the ESG as the measure of quality of higher education. Awareness on compliance with ESG is the matter of any agency's mission. But it needs a systematic approach. It needs participation of all stakeholders, and it needs support of foreign partners too. Independency, we cannot talk about any kind of full independency. We are independent on government decisions. We are independent on government resources, most of the agencies, let's say so. And at the end, we are dependent on how government position agency in the system. In that way, if government put the right place of agency in the system, then we will have priority in some kind of systemic changes. So that's the conclusion. That's how our expectations did not fulfilled, not because of ESG, SEQA-ESG project. We learned a lot. Actually, all of I mentioned now is the product of SEQA-ESG process. but raising awareness of the importance of ESG, raising within higher education institutions awareness that ESG is the matter of competitiveness, not only one, checkpoint in their obligations to some European standards, is also a matter of compliance and integration of Montenegro or any other country in the EHEA substantially, not only formally.
Thanks so much, Diana, for this addition to the webinar. Indeed, I think your point here on the power or relevance of government as one of the key stakeholders, and then allowing for the rest of the agency stakeholders to fruitfully contribute to the agency work is really relevant, and it showed the importance in the last two cases that we now listened to. So Moldovan case and then Maltese case. I am also very well aware of the Kosovo's priority in reaching ESG in getting government on their side in further strengthening their relationship with the rest of the agency stakeholders. Any other question or reflection on the two presentations we heard? I have one actually. We have talked a lot about how your two agencies engage different stakeholders on different levels, different nature of these engagements through different committees. This requires a lot of resources. So how do you assure all of these resources? How do you manage all of this work? Perhaps Lawrence, you first. We heard a lot about that, and everyone is saying, yes, indeed, we are aware of the need and how to do all that, but yeah, where do the resources come from?
You are right in highlighting this. I think it was one of the challenges which I should have mentioned as well. Yes, resources, particularly human resources, tend to be quite also another challenge, because involving as much as possible stakeholders in every aspect, in every stage of the authorities' work tends to be quite challenging. We recently have also submitted our HR plan to the ministry, and we have also mentioned as one of the main reasons why we would need more resources, because of this involvement, more involvement of stakeholders, basically. The authority is not allowed in Malta to employ without having the consent from the minister, because at the end of the day, we're talking about public finance here.
Thanks so much, Lawrence. Stella, anything to add?
Yeah, actually, I want to say that we are facing the same challenges Lawrence already mentioned in this regard with human resources. Yeah, because again, in our case as well, we have very limited human resource within the agency, and it's very restricted again by the legal provisions. For example, only 5 people working in the department, which is actually involved in the external quality assurance activities in relation to the higher education institutions. And here comes this very beneficial progress visit that we had in October, where we had the ministry as well invited within this meeting, and these issues once again tackled, with the limited human resources that we have, and that we can't, for example, expand the number of the people involved. So, and a positive let's say impact of the visit and of the project in this regard as a whole was that we got the attention of our decision-making bodies on this issue, and they promised us that they are going to introduce some amendments
in the near future. So let's hope that these amendments come as quickly as possible so that we can actually manage on our human resources.
Thanks so much, Stella, for this positive information. Let's hope indeed that this remains the case. All right, if you all agree, let's move to the next session. It follows very nicely what Colin presented at the very beginning of this webinar. So if you recall that slide, he mentioned that there's involvement of students and other stakeholders in external quality assurance panels of quality assurance agencies. It still remains a challenge. So we thought of dedicating some time today to talk also about this. We will use the two examples, one from Montenegro and one from Albania, to talk about it. First, I will give the floor to Tamara to talk about Montenegro's case in dealing with recruitment, selection, training of experts. More specifically on how do you manage to ensure impartiality, independence of experts in such a small system, and how do you go about it? And then we will go to the Albanian case to hear what are their challenges in and gaps in involving external experts, especially the non-involvement of students and stakeholders such as employers in the agency's activities. Tamara, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Goran, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be part of this project, because as Tiana mentioned, and I will say, it was very valuable because of all the experiences we heard from the colleagues from other agencies, as well as the experiences and inputs that we received from the experts that were engaged also in this project, especially because our agency is relatively young and it was established and started to work at the end of 2018. So it was very, very valuable, all the inputs and the information we have received. If you can move to the next slide. The thing is, within Montenegro is that, and the part of the awareness of the top management and those that are decision makers is that here in Montenegro we have two different types of rule books and rules, and according to the law, these rules are adopted, one by the ministry and the other by the agency. Why am I mentioning this? Because in those that are adopted by the ministry, as it is rule book on the procedure of accreditation of study programs, we do not include students, representatives of the economy, as well as trainings in our procedures. So students and representatives of the economy are not the part of peer review experts, although we suggest it to be part of them, because we know the importance of these experts in the panels and in the evaluation procedures, but the ministry and the secretariat on the law did not accept that, and they decided not to include them within our procedures. The benefits when you adopt rules by yourself is that you can include everything that is important and that is in compliance with ESG. So when it comes to the procedures for accreditation of higher education institutions and the rules that cover these procedures, we noticed and we learned about the importance of these peer reviewers. So we included them, and now in evaluation procedures on higher education institutions, students and representatives of the economy are also mandatory part of the review panel. Next slide, please. So when it comes to generally peer review experts and the panels, we here in our agency, we have the open call for peer review experts whole year. So what is the procedure? We'll conclude list at the end of each quarter, because according to the law, we can engage just those review panelists who are on the list. So we decided to have the open call for the whole year, but to conclude the list by the end of each quarter. How we do that and how we check if they fulfill the meet the conditions defined by the public implementation, we formed the agency commission that is consisted by the employees from the agency, who checks whether those experts meet the condition, and then the director concludes the list. So just those who are on the list, and the list is also publicly available, can be part of the evaluation procedures. Also, coordinator suggests the peer review panel for the evaluation, and the director appoints the panel. We know that this part of the procedure is not very good, because it does not give the decision making should not be by the director of the agency, but that's something that we cannot at the moment influence, because it's prescribed by the law for higher education. Also, all criteria for selection and for formation of the peer review panel are available on the website of the agency. So at any moment, any expert or peer reviewer can see if he is on the list, what are the criteria for choosing them to include them in the evaluation procedure, and similar. So Montenegro is a very small country. At the moment, we have a list of more than 400 experts. You don't need more than 400 academic staff on the experts list, more than 20 students, and more than 30 representatives of the economy at the list of experts. So Montenegro is a small higher education sector, and we heard from the example of Malta that we deal with the same issues and same challenges, because here we have 4 universities and a couple of faculties, and basically we can say that everyone knows each other. So it's very difficult to provide both and independency, but also the objective approach, because some of the expert reviewers maybe were already engaged or work on the project with colleagues from other faculties. The benefits that we were the part of the former Yugoslavia is that all our neighboring countries are from the same speaking area. So this is something that we used to overcome this challenge regarding the peer reviewers. In the biggest evaluation procedure of the institution of the Public University of Montenegro, we engaged 54 review experts, and out of these 54, more than 90% were outside from Montenegro, from the neighboring countries, and all neighboring countries can be part of our expert commissions, because we are, as I said, from the same speaking area. So what we do now to engage and to involve more experts within our lists and within our evaluation procedures is that after every quarter, we do the analysis of the expert list based on the region, scientific field, how many times some of them were already engaged, because we do not want to include those that were engaged 2 or 3 times and even more. Based on these analyses, we send a targeted call to all agencies, but also to the higher education institutions. For example, at this moment, we noticed that we lack the experts from the field of philology and language sciences. So we are sending to specific call to those higher education institutions, sometimes even to academic staff on these higher education institutions, inviting them to apply for our list, so we can make a bigger list and even more people that we can engage. Also, the important thing is that at the beginning, when we start the procedure and when we check who might be involved in the evaluation procedure, we send to those reviewers the statement on the absence of conflict of interest, and ask them to sign if they are ready to be involved, and they should not be in the conflict of interest. And also the one of the main challenges regarding all this is those trainings and briefings, because we have noticed that this is a critical issue if we want to have consistency within the evaluation reports, and if we want to also inform and train our experts to create and to evaluate according to all our rules and all our guidelines. Next slide, please. So, as I said, there are some challenges that we are now dealing when it comes to peer review experts and engagement of peer review experts. As I said, it's the independency of the selection of experts in peer review panels. So, because this is not something that we can directly change, it's also prescribed in the law. Our idea at the moment is to try to create the methodology and the procedures for the coordinators on how they should choose and what they should write, and in which way they have to choose those experts when they want to suggest that to a director for appointing them. So to choose as much as they can experts that fulfill different criteria based on the evaluation request, and after that to give the opportunity and to have the proof that these experts are chosen based on those specific criteria that are in compliance with the evaluation request for the evaluation or accreditation or reaccreditation. Also, the second challenge that we notice that it is very important and learned based on the experience of our colleagues from other agencies within this project, and also from all other experts, are trainings and education, but not just for the peer review experts, but also for the coordinators. So we need to have structured education and training first for the coordinators and then for the review panels. So in order to provide equal, not just the treatment, but approach to the evaluation procedure, and at the end to have and provide the consistency of the evaluation reports. One of the challenges, as I said, we are a small country and our neighboring countries are from the same speaking area, but what we want to do in future is to engage more international peer reviewers. It is very difficult now because all our requests for accreditation or reaccreditation are submitted in Montenegrin language, and they are not higher education institutions are not obliged to apply also in English language. So our idea is because we heard, not just heard, but know that the trend and will be developing all different kind of study programs in English language, joint study programs, international summer schools, and similar to engage more international peer reviewers that could be engaged specifically, as I said, now in English language. And we have learned a lot from this project. The next slide, please. You asked a question if you can just point out one topic that was most useful, but since we are very young and we learned a lot during these couple of years in this project, everything is very important to us. And I can say that almost every time after workshops and all different discussions, we almost always had some new ideas how to improve something, how to change something, how to overcome some obstacles and similar. So basically, here are 4 topics that were very useful for us and that we have learned from the addressing the obstacles in implementation of these standards, from how we learned from other countries that they that they deal with the same issues in ESG implementation, transfer of their knowledge, their expertise, their experience, also valuable solutions for obstacles provided by experts at workshops, but also the one of the important issues that we feel and the result of this project was that we feel that the awareness on the importance of ESG compliance was raised when we compare it to the beginning and now the end of the project, especially at the level of decision makers. That's all from my side, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamara, especially on congratulating us all on the work done in raising awareness on the need to be ESG compliant. Now, before I give the floor for any question, I would like to actually ask Arion to continue with the discussion on the challenges agency is facing in involving independent experts in external quality assurance. Arion, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Goran. I would like to mention in the beginning that in the last year, it considered together with the SEQA-ESG project also the amendment of our two main legal acts, that of the Quality Code and that of the main regular act of the agency, which allowed, in this case, the agency to involve legally the students and the stakeholders in the external evaluation groups. And by that, now is the second phase, that is that of the implementation. And we have somehow drawn a roadmap on how to better involve the stakeholders and the students in the external evaluation groups, starting firstly by reframing our list of the external evaluators, which is a list of approximately 900, let's say, external evaluation experts, and we want to reframe that list to see the possibilities of who of those experts can be also included mainly as stakeholders, not only just like reviewers. And by doing that, then we will open a call for also for students. In this case, that it's a little more complicated because there are students need incentives in order to be involved on those groups, and we have to, let's say, take measures to raise their awareness of the importance of being part of these groups. And in this case, we have thought of opening a call which will include also the international students, not only of those who are studying in Albania, but also the Albanian diaspora who study abroad. But why not also not Albanian students, but students that just study in other European universities. And by doing that, with all these measures, let's say, we are planning to implement, to form groups which would include students and stakeholders by the beginning of the year, which means January or February at most, which would coincide also with the implementation of the new quality code, because some of the standards have changed. So we have improved some of them, including, let's say, to make all the standards of most of them in compliance with ESGs. And in this case, I would like to mention that the project, which considered with these two amendments, helped us, let's say, in incorporating also the best practices of some of the partners who are already engaging students or stakeholders in their external evaluation processes, but also from the speakers who you have invited in the sessions that we have had in common throughout these last 2 years. So we hopefully think that we'll manage to start by the beginning of this year, but there are still some, let's say, obstacles or challenges that we need to face, like I said, mostly the trainings also of the students and which will be their exact role in the groups, because since that this is a pilot, let's say, or let's say that it will be like an exercise also for us to see also how the higher education institution will react towards the inclusion of the students in the external evaluation groups, and to see on how we can, let's say, incentive the students, how we can award them for being part of the groups. So those are the main obstacles on which we are working on, actually. And like I said in the beginning, that some of the examples, for example, I would like to mention the example of Moldova. We have, let's say, managed to incorporate some of those examples also in our case here. And we'll see when we start the real implementation how it will work then.
Thank you very much, Arian. I'm very happy to hear that the project stimulated the agency to start engaging students in panels. It does take some time to get the system used to this novelty, if you wish. Once it's there, any agency that I know that looks backwards says, how could we do it without students as the key stakeholder in higher education as such. Thank you very much for this reflection to both of you. Now I'm checking the screen. Are there any questions or comments to the colleagues? Anyone? Alexis, please go ahead.
Hi, Goran. If may, I have a question for both our speakers, Tamara and Arian. Good to see you again. I have a question. As you know, one of the things that has been mentioned before also by Martina and Robert is about this project brought an external experience. And also both of you have mentioned that there was a lot of exchanges with other agencies facing similar challenges. My question would be, and especially since peer review topics, peer review exercise was one of the topics that we covered specifically in the project, was there anything from the exchanges, whether external or with other project participants, that has helped you to maybe to overcome one of your challenges? Something you will say like, oh, this definitely comes from the exchanges I've had in the framework of SEQA-ESG project regarding peer review experts or other topics, if you wish. So thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. If I may, there was very clear that especially in this peer review expert engagement, it was very interesting and raised a lot of issues that we afterwards tried to implement, especially when it comes to trainings, because that was something that we very much lack of. And I can say, since we are young and we learned a lot through the project and during these years, and through all these evaluation procedures, we learned that the importance of the trainings, the difference between trainings and briefings. We started to do something. Yeah, I see you're smiling because it was a very hot topic during the meeting. That was something that was, I can say now, maybe unclear to us, but definitely gave us ideas on how we are going to handle and to put in the procedure these issues. So basically everything was very useful, not just from the point of view, if we are not doing something, then we learned how to do it, but also if we are doing something, okay, that's the proof that we are in the right direction in implementing all these issues and all the standards. Thank you.
Yeah, on our side, I would say that let's say the reframing of the list, as I said, we had a large list of reviewers, of experts. The reframing of that list in order to address who of them can serve better as an academic and who of them can serve also as an employer, that made possible for us to divide that list or to subtract that or to reframe it in purely academic reviewers and experts who can serve also as who can be engaged as also as stakeholders, and experts who are part of regulated professionals who can serve also like not employer but like market research contributors in this regard.
Indeed. Thanks so much, Arian and Tamara for this reflection. Anyone else? Any other question to the two colleagues? I'm mindful of time, but still, if there's any question, I will be happy to take it. If not, let me then thank all of the 6 agencies for your presentations today. It's impossible to talk about all lessons learned in 2.5 hours as we have them today. But still, we wanted to give you a bit of a flavor of what all were the key discussions and the key lessons learned. And for this, I actually asked our Vice President, Kristina Gitulica, to summarize it all in her final presentation of today. She's unfortunately not able to join us because she's at the European Commission's DG on Higher Education meeting in Prague. But she has prepared a presentation, so I will now roll the video, and then we can discuss what she considers as key lessons learned for reaching ESG compliance of an agency. Here we go. Now let me know if you can hear her.
Dear colleagues, I'm very sorry for not being able to be with you live today, but there is another meeting that I have to join at the same hour. Ideally, today we should have met in person to celebrate this point of the journey that we had together. But anyways, I am happy that we had the chance, at least this year, to see each other. Instead, you know what is even more weird than to speak to a screen? Well, is to speak to a screen where there is not anyone. So I really hope I can make it. Anyways, I'm actually very happy that I have the opportunity to tell you how grateful I am that I had the chance to be part of this project. Coming from a country sharing not only the same geographical area, but also historical challenges and maybe cultural particularities, I have recognized many of the issues we faced when we set up the quality assurance system in Romania. And with some of them, we are still struggling even today. I felt that it is, and I hope it was useful to share what we have learned from our experience, trying to spare you from going through the same closed ways or maybe making the same mistakes. At my turn, I learned a lot, and again, it was proof that there are so many ways in which things can be done better and still answer to the standards set by the ESGs. And I would very much like to thank you all for that. I think that this project has provided an ideal mix of activities such as peer counseling and peer learning activities, as well as setting up concrete action plans and implementing them at the extent possible in the given time frame. I believe that the involvement of experts was important, but also the exchanges between agencies facing similar challenges had a lot of added value. The final progress visits have shown that important steps were made, while some of the agencies involved have already submitted their applications for an ENQA coordinated review against the ESGs, and I think this is really an amazing outcome. The involvement of ministries should also be acknowledged. We know how many things they have to deal with within a ministry every day, so finding the time for quality assurance issues is not always easy, but at the same time, concrete results, it is not possible to be achieved without continuous collaboration and support from their part. This is the last meeting that we are having within the project, so I think it might be the right time to reflect on the key challenges that we have met, but also on the lessons learned and the experiences that could be maybe valorized within similar future approaches. In terms of challenges, I think that there are general ones, but also some which are specific to different standards of the ESGs. I also see challenges that can be solved at the level of the agency, but also others which are external. And here, of course, we need to reflect if there still is a role to play for the quality assurance agencies. In terms of general challenges, I think that setting up or even revising a quality assurance system requires a long time commitment from all actors which are involved. And here, of course, we do not speak only about the quality assurance agencies and the ministry, but also about all of the stakeholders which are relevant for higher education. A strong political commitment would also be needed. All these actors should have the same understanding of the objectives and the actions needed. And I think this cannot be achieved without continuous and good collaboration between all the actors which are involved. I also think that behind any step forward, there are people. And so it's important that they should have the mandate to be able to finish what it was started. Only in this way we can actually have a continuous progress. And finally, even if this seems quite obvious, we see that not always the standards are fully understood and or complete implementation is intended. In what it concerns the specific challenges, I underlined here a few that I found more frequent or which I think are more important. If we start with the fitness for purpose, I think that this can be quite a challenge. When setting up a QA system, the level of development of the higher education institutions in the country should be considered. Also, a serious analysis, I think, should be realized in order to really understand what is expected from the QA activities. And this should be put in the national context and also a reflection on the efforts needed both from the agencies and from the higher education institutions in order to implement all of those activities should be realized. At the beginning, I think that it's quite likely to see maybe more control-related features in the quality assurance procedures, but still, I think that the right equilibrium should be found. The independence of quality assurance agencies is crucial. And here, really, I believe that we should look at all of the guidelines which are described by the ESGs and which are tackling different aspects related to independence. Well, having such an important entity with an important role of functioning in an independent manner, autonomously, might be difficult to accept at a certain point, but this is the way things should happen. And in my view, this might be the most important external challenge. And it is not to be taken for granted, not even in countries with well-established quality assurance systems. Students are, for obvious reasons, the most important stakeholders group, and quite a good example of challenge that could and should be solved at the level of the agency. Sometimes students' involvement is not seen as a priority. Also, there might be situations where students are not interested to join quality assurance procedures, or situations where they are not part of all of the activities of the agency, or their involvement might be formal. I think that for a meaningful involvement of students, maybe also a cultural shift might be needed, and indeed this cannot happen from one day to another, and it might take some time. In small countries where everybody seems to know everybody, also avoiding conflicts of interest is an issue, which could be solved by the involvement of international experts. But here the issue is that those international experts do not have enough knowledge about the national higher education system of that respective country. Also, we see problems related to the publication, full publication of reports, and also to set up appeals and complaints procedures which are specific to the quality assurance type of activities. And these last two challenges, I think that there are examples of external challenges that generally are related to the provisions in the legislation. A special focus, I think, it should be put on the national legal framework as the main external challenge that we have identified. And here we know that in general, when something goes wrong, we say that is not allowed by the legislation, which of course in some cases might be an excessive interpretation. I think that the legal framework should set the main features of the QA system, and that's why it's of course very important. It should establish the types of procedures, secure the independence and resources, enough resources for the agency, but also it should allow flexibility in functioning and governance. The right balance between what is needed to be regulated at low level and what it can be left to the agency level to be decided, it should be found. The legislation also should be coherent because, for example, if the employees of an agency are public servants, are set as public servants, then it's not very likely that autonomy can be secured in terms of hiring the staff or of the external experts even, or that the appeals and complaints procedures can be set to comply with the ESGs, because actually all the features specific to public administration might apply. In any case, I think that it's very important to have the legal framework developed and discussed with the agency, and also from the part of the agency, they should be active in proposing changes when these are needed, even if this seem out of the hands of quality assurance, of the quality assurance bodies. Another issue is that in general, the time frame for changing the legislation is very long. And here I think that the political commitment is very important and is mandatory in order to be able to change something. And finally, I think that agencies should be seen as a partner, an important one. They should be invested with trust. Of course, the trust has also to be earned. We should rely on them. They can really have a very important contribution to the development of the education system of a respective country. They also a valuable source of expertise, which I think that it should be valorized. Finally, I have tried to reflect a little bit on the main lessons learned in the activities of the project. And here, I would like to start with the need for commitment. In order to achieve progress, I think that a critical mass should be achieved from all the actors involved, inclusively the political ones. All actions should start from a realistic diagnosis of the situation and of the expectation of those involved. Objectives should be realistic and should be very clear and related to given time frames by which they have to be implemented. Also, I think that maybe it's better to focus on less objectives or on the minimum standards to be achieved, because afterwards, for sure, there is room and time for improvement. Quality assurance is mainly an international cooperation business. So take advantage of the opportunities for collaboration, ask for help. Maybe sometime the solution could be a discussion distance. Be active in joining projects, different types of seminars or working groups. There is a need to build knowledge and know-how within the agency, and this always takes time. Be present whenever it is relevant. People should see you, should acknowledge that you are the reference point in terms of quality assurance. To conclude, at the end of the day, we might ask ourselves, is this effort worth? Are we going to achieve an impact that is visible in the improvement of the quality of education that all actors would see and acknowledge? I'm thinking here about students, professors, but also about the parents, employers, and even the general public. I believe the answer can and is actually very simple. The ESGs should be implemented because they work and can set the foundation for a meaningful quality assurance system. And I think this is because they were developed by the stakeholders, by all the relevant actors, and tested already for 17 years. I also think that they should not be a scope in itself. They should not be seen as something that it comes from outside and that we artificially try to impose at the national level. Each time when we try to develop a new activity or a new procedure, I think that first of all, we should think how to do it in order to be relevant and to achieve the scope for which was intending. And if we succeed in doing that, for sure, that will be also in compliance with the ESGs. I will stop here by thanking you for listening to me. And as I said at the beginning, I think this should not be an end. I'm looking forward to seeing you on different occasions. And please do not hesitate to reach out if myself or us at ENQA can be of any help. I'm wishing you all the best, but also to comply with the ESGs as soon as possible. Maybe this can also be a wish to put under the Christmas tree. Goodbye, everyone.
This was great. It feels strange to thank Christina like this. So she's not here, but rest assured that I will say a proper thank you when I meet her next time. We cannot collect questions because she cannot answer them, but any reflection, anything that you heard that perhaps struck you or just came as a surprise. She made a very nice overview of the challenges related to being ESG compliant, but I'm happy that she also then at the end summarized why we are doing all of this and what for. Any question or remark, better said? Jolanta, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Goran. I just want to add some remarks regarding what Christina already emphasized in her presentation. And actually, all the challenges mentioned and all the challenges identified during the project, these challenges are not only for the new system, these also are challenges also for mature systems. And it's like a never-ending story. We are trying to do our best to ensure that our quality assurance systems are in compliance with ESG, but it's always room for improvement. It's always we see what else we should do or what we could do in order the system is in line and it's efficient and it's and everyone who is involved in this system feels that it's helpful and valuable for everyone. So just keep working on that all the systems are in line and let's cooperate with each other and continue to work with each other, because only in close communication and collaboration we could achieve the goals. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jolanta. Indeed, we have in this room today actually also partners from the upcoming SEQA-ESG projects, colleagues from Ukraine, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Azerbaijan, and we will try to build bridges with the existing SEQA-ESG partners. We are hoping to organize an event where we will bring you all together simply to enable further sharing of experience, and that is planned to be done somewhat in February or March next year. I will inform those of you that relate to this project and the SEQA-ESG number 2. Tiana, you have a question or remark?
Actually, it is a remark just to say that Christina's presentation struck me, as you said. It is very comprehensive and very concrete with very strong messages. And if Christina was here, we would, as usual, need not minutes more, as all workshops in SEQA-ESG project showed that never enough time. So it says a lot about the project, and I wanted to emphasize that the process is important, not only, you know, membership in ENQA, but the process through which all countries that want complied higher education systems with ESG are growing. And to thank you for something that I think that it is the opinion of all of us, for very interesting methods that you applied during workshops. Very, very inspiring and motivating for discussion and thinking, not discussion only during the workshops, but after that. That is something I forgot to say, and it is worth to say.
Well, thank you so much, Tiana, for this. It's nice to hear that we worked a lot indeed on making it a little bit different than just having some presentations and listening to different experience. Martina.
Yeah, thank you. Listening to Christina's presentation, it actually brought another point or another idea to me where one of the most important activities as a part of the project to me was the staff mobility. So we did not touch on them very much today, but I think they were one of the most valuable tools of sharing of good practice and experience that we have had in the project. And one of the challenges that Christina mentioned were quite specific, and some of them also quite soft or abstract issues, such as finding the balance between the control-oriented and peer review-oriented approach, or balancing where to direct the efforts and the resources of the agency with handling multiple issues at the same time. And these are questions that I think take a lot of time to discuss and to really get deep into. And sometimes in the group meetings, there's not that much time to get very much in depth of how each system works and what the context is, and how one element of the system that is being the focus of discussion, how it actually fits into the entire system and how it's related to all the other elements within the system. So I think that this is where the staff mobility really helps to get very much in depth and to, well, I don't want to say fully, but to sufficiently understand a system in order to really draw lessons from it and to understand why it's designed a certain way and why things work there, and what kind of practice could be transferred to the system at home, and which elements might not be as easily transferred because of the different setup of the system or the different history. But I just wanted to emphasize this part of the project at the end, just because I really, really enjoyed it and appreciated it.
Thanks, Martina, actually for reminding me and all of us of this part as well. Indeed, we did provide staff mobilities to already ESG compliant agencies as well as part of this project. All right, if there's no other comment, I would like to thank you all for participating today, to the project partners for all the great work we have done in the last 2.5 years, meetings we have held online and offline. You might have noticed there was a picture of a bumpy road at the beginning of today's webinar. This is exactly because we were a bit online and then finally offline, but we are wrapping up perhaps in a way we started, so online. This is not a goodbye. ENQA as an association is and always has doors open to our members and affiliates to help out when needed. If you see that you have any idea for possible collaboration, you would like to see us at some of your national events and so on, feel free to reach out, and we will be happy to help you out and share experience from the European higher education area. We will provide slides of this webinar on our website, together with the survey that we will send you to fill in. Now, there's one more thing that I would like to ask you, and actually it is a very simple one. If you could turn on your camera, so we would make a group photo for this webinar. Here we go. Slowly turning on and seeing you all. Great. Alexis, will you do the counting and then a print screen?
Yeah, just a minute. So just wait. So 1, 2, 3, and wait.
Ready?
So wait again. And go.
All right. Thanks so much,
All right.
Alexis, and thank you all. There's nothing else to say from my side than really thanking you all for participating today. If you have any other, if you have any question about the SEQA-ESG project, like I said, please feel free to reach out. We are here for you as an association of quality assurance agencies in the European higher education area. With this, have a great day and hope to see you all some other time, be it at the General Assembly or Members Forum or any other event of ENQA. Stay well, everyone. All the best.